Good afternoon, everyone. This is part two of the interview and Q&A series with Georgie from Teacher's Friend Vietnam. In this part, we figure out what exactly is a good teaching job in Vietnam. What should people who are either experienced veteran teachers or new to teaching in Vietnam, what should they look at when evaluating jobs, either from abroad, back in their home country, or actually on the ground? And on top of that, what are some red flags to look out for, and what should you expect from a proper contract and opportunity? So Georgie has been amazing. She runs Teacher's Friend Vietnam, which is kind of a full service recruitment and support agency to help everyone get set up in Vietnam with proper and legal jobs. And she does a great job of walking us through this question on how to get your first teaching gig in Vietnam. So enjoy. All right, Georgie, thanks for being here. This is an exciting talk because I have spent some good time in Vietnam, but I've never taught there. And so it's really good to have you on to answer some of these questions for, I think, people that are considering working there. So thanks.
You're welcome.
I'm curious. So obviously your first job was not ideal. Was it a lack of research on your end, kind of being naive? And what should people look out for in terms of a good job when they're looking at Vietnam? Like, what are some characteristics?
Well, when I first moved to Vietnam, I actually did it through a teach abroad program, and they are in. I'm not going to name drop them, but it's
No,
so tempting.
don't name them. Yeah.
No, not going to name drop them, but they are like a big, massive organization. And yeah, they just didn't live up to what they were meant to live up to. And it was actually them that placed me in this public school.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure why. I don't think they'd ever actually been to the school or seen how it ran or anything. I think the school had just said, we need teachers. And they were like, okay, cool, I've got this teacher. She's called Georgie. So
Yeah,
I was just
we got teachers.
yeah, dropped into the school. So if you're looking for a good school, the pay that you want to be on is about $1,200 to $1,500 per month. You're going to be on about 1,200 if you're a new teacher. This does
What is
contradict
that? Is
what you may
that
have read online. Go on.
is that USD, or is that what would it be in Vietnamese
That is
dong?
US dollars. Yeah.
Okay.
In, it's off the top of my head, I have no idea in Vietnamese dong.
Okay.
Somewhere between about 27 million.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. So
um,
pricing is the first thing. Got it.
yeah, so it's between 27 and 29 million. But your contract, they should give you a quote in US dollars, or you can obviously convert it. So
Yeah.
1,200 to 1,500. But as a new teacher, you're going to be going in at 1,200. I was on, this is all before tax, and I was going in at $1,400, and I had 2.5 years of experience
Got it. Plus the
when
Celta.
I first went in, plus a salary. Yeah. So um, but you want to also take note of the amount of hours that you're doing. So, you may have read online that people are getting $2,000, $2,500. One, these are in the private schools, the ones where you get thrown in the deep end. And also, I was teaching half-hour lessons of speaking and pronunciation practice. And literally, it was just playing games with like 8 words for half an hour. Then you go the next class, you do it again. Then you go the next class, you do it again. It gets so boring and so repetitive, and you're not actually really teaching any grammar or structures or anything interesting or any new vocabulary, because they already know it, because they've already been taught it. Whereas
Hmm.
in the language centers, you're doing the whole package. You're doing the introduction to the vocabulary, the learning of the vocabulary, the putting it into a sentence. um, so yeah, so that's the first thing. And then yeah, you also need to make sure the hours that you're doing. um, so you might be told that it's like, for example, $1,700, but then you find out that you're teaching like 40 hours a week. So if you do
Oh
the
God.
maths, you're actually only on $10 an hour.
Yeah.
Whereas the language centers that I work at, and the ones that you should be looking for, it's $1,200, but you're only teaching for 18 hours a week. So
Oh,
again,
okay.
if you do the maths, it's actually a lot better than it sounds.
Does
Um,
does Vietnam do split shifts where it's like morning and afternoon, or is it all okay? So it's all just kind of one block.
Well, no. So there's
Really?
lots of different places you can work, but I worked at
Yeah.
the language centres. So that's evenings and weekends, because
Got
the
it.
kids obviously have to go to school. 98% of the teaching in Vietnam is kids age 3 to 16 years. Teaching adults in Vietnam, it's very hard to get those kind of jobs, especially if you're working legally with a work permit. There's just not the market for it. So yeah, you're going to be teaching kids And so, yeah, you'll be doing evening and weekends. If you do work in a school, you'll be doing, for example, 9 till 12, then you'll get an hour off from 12 till 1, and then you'll be doing, for example, 1 until 4.
Mhm. Got it. Okay. So I'm sorry. I was going to ask, looking back on your first job, were there any like red flags that you realize now that you didn't see then when you were applying or kind of getting yourself in order?
So I didn't see the red flags because I'd signed up with a teaching program, and so I just went, okay, here's my school. But if you are looking, so one thing is make sure you check that the hours matches the pay that you're
Yeah.
actually being given. Look at the benefits that you're going to get. If your school is not giving you a work permit or a work visa provided, you don't want to work for them, because to work legally in Vietnam, you must have a work permit and you must have the visa, and you can do it yourself, but it costs you a lot of money, and it's all of the paperwork is all in Vietnamese, so it's extremely difficult. You've got to get down to the Department of Labor. Imagine like a complicated process in your home country, but then in Vietnamese.
Yeah.
So the easiest way, the way everyone does it, is the language center just provides that for you. So you definitely want to be with someone who's going to provide that for you. And if you look at any job advert, it should say benefits, and it should say, program provided. If you are looking at a job advert, it's like, hey, come teach some kids, you'll have a great time.
Pay
That's probably
pay
not
off
the
those
kind of
student
place.
loans. Yeah. Where it's
Yeah,
just
it's
like,
not the kind of
broad,
place.
nothing
Exactly.
specific. Yeah. So obviously with your company, Teachers for in Vietnam, you work with established and proven schools. If someone is not going to go through a company like yourself, would you recommend they speak to other teachers there to validate their concerns, or what some ways to check to make sure the school's on the up and up?
So again, it all depends whether you're applying from outside the country or inside the country. If you're in the country already, then yeah, by all means, speak to the other teachers. Go into the school, get a feel for it. At the interview, that's like the biggest one. So if you find a school that you like, go to the interview. If they're asking you like, what's your experience? How would you teach this? You might get a question like, how would you teach a young learner class in comparison to an adult class, or something like that, or a
Yeah.
teenage class, sorry. If you go to your interview and they're like, oh, okay, looks pretty, yes. Are you white? Yes. Are you, all they care about. Do you have to, if you
Speak
don't ask
English.
if you've got TEFL, do you look correct? Yes. Okay,
Uh,
you've got the job. That's obviously like a big no. So at the interview, like, it should be quite hard. Like, you should be kind of trying to be, thinking of the answers. Like, it should challenge you, a little bit. If there's not really any questions, then they clearly don't really care what kind of teacher you are, so they don't really care about their students. So what does that
yeah.
say about the type of center that you're working at?
Yeah.
And again, just some things to look out for. You should get medical insurance. I always suggest that you have your own on top of it, because it's not that comprehensive, but you should get medical insurance included. You should get paid holiday of about 4 weeks included. You should get professional development included. They should have the resort like resources and books that you can use and online stuff. Some of the schools you just go to and they're like, off you go, and you've got to teach a whole curriculum and you've not got any materials or a course book or anything. So that's really important. And then again, they should provide benefits such as an end of year completion bonus, a hotel when you first arrive, airport pickup, your visa and your work permit. All of that kind of stuff should be outlined in your contract, and you should get a contract.
Mhm.
If you don't get
What
the
about
contract, don't sign up.
well, yeah, I think that's the biggest red flag of all. If you don't have the contract, that's kind of on you for for not wanting one or not demanding one. What about housing? How does it work in Vietnam? Is housing provided by the employer? Do they do a stipend, or is it just kind of you're on your own for that?
In Vietnam, if your housing is provided by your employer, you probably don't want to work for them. They
Oh,
kind of,
really? That's a red
yeah,
flag.
yeah. They're kind of doing that to make up for the fact that there's not much else going on. And a lot of the time, so again, in my first job, my housing was included, and I was living on my own in the school. So in the morning, if I wasn't working at 7 a.m., there was like 500 kids running down the corridor right outside my door. I'd be going home at night, tired, just want to chill. Miss Georgie, Miss Georgie, Miss Georgie. I had a curfew because there was security guards. I had to be back at 11 o'clock at night, and if I wasn't, I couldn't come home. So obviously your nightlife kind of sucks.
Yeah.
So the only what's the word, exception to this would be if you were in like a really small city. So if they help you with your accommodation, that's good. But if they're literally like, oh, this is your salary and you get free accommodation, normally that's a bit of a red flag. So they will assist you with accommodation, but a lot of the time they don't. You're just kind of left to your own, which is where Teacher's Friend
Yeah.
comes in, and we will help you. But if you wanted to do it on your own, there's a lot of Facebook pages that you go and look at. And again, there's little things that you should look out for. Make sure you get a contract. The landlord will take your passport off you because by law they have to register. So actually, it's more of a red flag if they don't ask you for your passport. So in some countries, the last thing you should do is give your passport over. In Vietnam, if it's for accommodation, if they're not asking you for your passport, it's because they're not telling anyone that you're staying in their house, which is a bit of a red flag. So you give them your passport, they make a copy of it, you should sign a contract. And then there's just little things to look out for, like if you're living in an alleyway, sometimes cars can't get down. So if you're getting a taxi home late at night and you live like 10 minutes down a dark alleyway, especially for me as like a single girl, that was not fun. So just have a look at sort of the area that you're living in. Go and speak to the flatmates, ask if there's been any problems, that kind of thing. But again, mostly you'd go to Facebook, or there are, what's the word, housing agents who can show you around the different houses, but they can be a little bit pushy. So you have to just stand your ground with them.
Yeah, stand your ground. I think the Facebook groups would be the best place to start because it's probably mostly expats anyway that
Yeah,
like you have
yeah.
experience like finding renting houses. Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any videos or interviews in the future.